Sometimes we just need a good cry. So having already done my list for scariest and funniest Doctor Who episodes, I wanted to touch on some more highly emotional moments that the show has given us, so I decided to tackle Saddest. Now, you may have noticed those previous episodes were funniest or scariest episodes. This is Saddest moments. I'm going to explain that real quick. When I did my list for funniest and scariest, I made it clear at the front that I wasn't talking about scariest or funniest individual moments, but rather they had to be episodes where a scary or funny element was a recurring persistent thing across the episode. Maybe not, necessarily the predominant, not necessarily the only element, but it had to be there as a through line. So that was what I came in wanting to do for the sad moments, but honestly, as I started to break into it and trying to find, pervasive sad things across episodes, I realized, well, actually, most of the really sad moments, the reason they hit as hard as they do is because you kind of don't see them coming, or you're not expecting them, or the rug gets pulled out from under you. So really, Doctor Who doesn't do the episode that is sad across the whole thing. It doesn't beat you down with misery. That's not what Doctor Who does. You can go watch Walking Dead if that's your bag. So this one is going to be saddest individual moments. Of course, I will be mentioning the episodes and the context in which they appear. And I need to interject right here and clarify, I'm talking new era Doctor Who from series 1 starting with Christopher Eccleston forward. I'm not dealing with classic here. And as with my funniest and scariest list, this is going to be subjective as heck. What really gets to you emotionally and makes you sad, makes you cry, is incredibly personal, possibly even more so than those other two lists were. So while I fully acknowledge there are many sad moments that may have hit many other people much harder but are not on this list, I'm not saying they aren't sad and that they don't work, but ultimately this is a list of what hit me the hardest. So that this is my list about me, my life, my history, my baggage, which in an odd way is going to make this a bit more of a personal psychological dive than I had intended. Oh well, let's get on with it anyway. Starting with number 10, Me's backstory. So, as I said, this is all very personal, and in my case, the fact that I am a parent factors into more than a few entries on this list. And getting the backstory of Isildur, or Me, however you want to refer to her, played by Maisie Williams, getting her backstory in The Woman Who Lived and understanding everything that she has lost across her time of basically not being able to die but still having these full lives and having children and losing those children, and the pain that she was able to express in both telling that story and in the actual visual flashback that we're given of her mourning her losses, to me I thought was very powerful, and just in a couple of moments gave me a very good understanding of where she was as a character at the time the Doctor was now encountering her, because she was a very different character from when we last saw her, but just that little bit of visualized and explained tragic backstory to me made everything clear and also kind of hit me personally. Number 9, the death of River's song in the Forest of the Dead. So this one is a little bit of a cheat, and that's part of the reason that it's lower on the list than maybe it would have been otherwise, but also when you're talking about River Song, you kind of end up having to break some rules. So the reason this is a cheat is this was not a particularly highly emotional moment for me when it first aired. I still, I felt like, oh, that's sad, but it didn't really get to me. Only on rewatches, having gotten to see what went on with River later, or for her earlier, and getting to know her and love her as a character, because personally I do. I know not everyone does, but I like River a lot. So at this point, going back and rewatching that episode, that moment hits me much harder than it did before. And if you consider that unfair, I don't care. It still hits me really hard, so I'm going to talk about it. I think a big part of it for me is just this kind of realization that she has that she is going to die, but then also this combination of sadness and acceptance, because when the Doctor says, time can be rewritten, and she just lashes out at him, not those times, not one word, don't you dare. It is this moment where she realizes that everything that she has experienced that has made up her life, that she loves, it has led her here, has led her to her death. But even knowing that now, in this instance, she does not want any of that changed, not any of it. And I find it a really interesting and emotionally powerful moment, because usually when you get characters getting some degree of acceptance of their fate, it usually comes with a sense of peace. And she has a little bit of that at the end, but we don't lose the sadness and the fact that she's scared. She's scared about what's going to happen, but she would still rather have it end like this and have the story be what it was that she'd experienced than lose that. And I find that touching and powerful and sad. Number 8, from Doomsday, a wall apart, but worlds away. This is, I think, like many sad moments, and also I think funny moments as well, this comes down to the performances. And I think David Tennant does a good job of just... because the Doctor has experienced loss before, and I don't mean to underplay what Rose meant to him, but he's experienced loss of this scale before, and so his expression of just, again, having to deal with this, but then her desperation pounding on this wall with the tears streaming down, that is a strong moment, because she would do anything in that moment to get back on that other side of the wall. And that shot where it looks like they're on two sides of a wall. It looks like they're so close, but they're not, and they won't be, and they can't be again. Ultimately, they would be again, but you, in the moment, you didn't know that. And I find that moment more powerful than the actual goodbye on the beach, which is still a good moment, but that moment with the wall, oh, that hits you. Number 7, Vincent still died. I think Vincent and the Doctor may be one of the best and most thorough and most enlightened depictions of depression that has been put in a fictionalized, televised form. And it's an episode that I honestly did not really appreciate when I first saw it. I never disliked it, but I didn't get it when I first saw it. I watched it and went, oh, that was okay. But on rewatching it, I've rewatched it more than a few times at this point, watching what he struggles with, watching the Doctor and Amy connect with him, and ultimately Amy, so convinced that there's going to be all these new paintings in the gallery, and getting in there and realizing he still died. He still took his own life, and they couldn't save him. But the Doctor saying, we still added to his pile of good things. And that it's this idea of when you're dealing with someone with that kind of situation, personal, mental, emotional situation, with depression, with things like that, there may not be a happy ending, but that does not invalidate what you had with them and what you gave to them. So it's very powerful, it's very touching, it's very sad, and it is incredibly honest about depression and what it can feel like to care about someone who suffers from it and may succumb to it. Number 6, from Turn Left, Donna realizing that she is going to die. There are a number of moments in Turn Left that are milked for emotional value. I would say overly so, honestly. I'm not as big on this episode overall as a lot of people are. But there is a moment that really hits me. And part of this, because spoilers, Donna's going to show up on this list again, but part of it is that Donna is my favorite companion. So I really connect with her, and when she is pained, I really do feel it, possibly more so than any other companion. But there is the moment when she is being sent back in time, across dimensions, whatever it is, that it's all being activated, and she says, oh, I understand now. I'll go back and change this, and I'll be alive. I'll live. And the look on Rose's face, and the silence, and the lack of response, and the weight of everything, and it's in Catherine Tate's face, this realization that she is going to save the world, but she won't be saved with it. Not this incarnation of Donna, at any rate. And that moment, that of hope and light that she thinks she sees just getting snuffed out with that look from Rose, that's brutal. Number 5, Donna being pulled out of the artificial reality in Forest of the Dead. Told you she was going to be on here more than once. And again, this is another one that speaks to the fact that I'm a parent, and there's a lot of stuff that I saw originally before I was a parent, and it didn't hit me as hard as it does now on the rewatch. So seeing Catherine Tate's performance when she is speaking with her children in this artificial reality, and they start to say to her, we feel like when you're not here that we don't exist. And it's dawning on her. 2 things are dawning on her. The first is the realization, the confirmation that this is all false, and it's not real. And in conjunction with that, the realization that means these children, real or not, that she loves, that with as much as any mother could love her children, are going to disappear as she comes to better understand that they're not real. It's just going to keep slipping away, and there's nothing she can do about it. And you can see she's trying so hard, and then they're just gone, and she breaks down, and that kills me when that happens. I find that incredibly tragic. Number 4, the doctor can't save Bill from The Doctor Falls. This is the closest one to being a through line strain throughout the episode as opposed to a single moment. But I still think, at least for me, it culminates in a single moment, because I think all the stuff with Bill in this episode, of the times in which we see her as a Cyberman, or we see her as she would want to see herself, as she still kind of envisions herself, going back and forth, seeing the way that people are responding to her. I think all that is very well handled, and you do feel the emotional weight of that. But I think everything culminates in the moment where she's talking with the doctor, and she says, "You told me you could save me. Were you lying?" And he answers, "No." And she asks, "Were you right?" And he says, "No." This realization, because I think it got not necessarily overplayed, but it was built up during Matt Smith's era. The doctor lies, that, and you had moments like in The Girl Who Waited, where he could be ruthless. And so the idea that he just lied to her, I can fix this, when he knew he couldn't, that wasn't out of the realm of possibility. But to realize when he said it, he believed it, but now he knows he's wrong, that's doubly tragic, because that is hope that he had given to Bill, and he had given honestly to her, that he now has to take away after he himself had to come to the realization. And he has to look at her and admit to her face, "I can't fix this." And the weight of that on both of them. It's not played for as heavy a sad moment as some of the other moments on this list, but for me, it felt like a real sinking of the spirit for both of those characters that I think was delivered very well. Number 3, from A Good Man Goes to War, Amy losing the baby. This one is very similar to the moment with Donna from a couple spots ago, and I honestly couldn't tell you why this one hits me a little harder than that one does, but it's very much for the same reason. I'm a parent, and there's something about her crouching and huddling and holding to protect this infant, and she is there being the protective, caring mother, and in an instant it's just gone. Everything she thought she was defending and protecting is just gone, and her reaction, and she screams, and she did a really good job of capturing the shock the pain. It felt different from Donna's pain. Donna's pain, and I'm not saying one pain is more impactful than another, but I think it distinguishes it in terms of the moments. Amy's pain felt more like the pain of a stillbirth or a miscarriage, whereas Donna's felt more like the loss of a parent whose children they had for some time, and they impact characters differently. And I even knowing that difference, I don't know if that's part of the reason this one hits me harder, but I think it's just the moment at which it happens. It is such a rug pull, whereas maybe the Donna moment was more, you see it coming and you know it's going to hurt, but you see it coming, whereas Amy, it's just out of nowhere. Maybe that's the difference, but yeah, that one hurts. Number 2, Wilfred Mott trying to give the doctor a gun. This one is really hard to articulate why I choke up every single time I see this. Well, it's partially hard to articulate. It's hard to dissect. How about that? Because I think it comes down to Bernard Cribben's performance as Wilf, and that he is choking his way through these lines, trying to give the doctor a weapon, and probably knowing the doctor won't take it, but just desperately wanting to help, to do anything he can to keep the doctor alive, and that he can't even get through the sentence without starting to cry and starting to blubber. And that performance, and how deeply Wilf feels the impending loss of David Tennant as the doctor, and I think personally that moment is more powerful than when the doctor actually saves him and sacrifices himself so Wilf can live, and he ends up dying. This moment of him trying to give him the gun is much more lump in my throat, chokes me up than later. And again, maybe it's the build up versus more of an in the moment thing, because it does feel like Wilf's breakdown and tears weren't built up to. They just started hitting him in that moment, and then they end up hitting me, and that's kind of it. And finally, the number 1 saddest moment for me in New Era Doctor Who to date is the Mindwipe of Donna from Journey's End. And again, it's down to performance. It's down to Catherine Tate. And in many ways, it recalls when River dies, and she snaps at him, don't you dare change a thing. Donna makes the same choice that River does, which is that she would rather die, having experienced what she experienced, than live and lose that. The difference is the doctor takes away her ability to make that choice for herself. He makes that choice for her regardless of what she wants. And her begging, her shaking her head, saying, no, please, as he goes in to remove every memory of what she had experienced with him, and her knowing it's coming and her begging him not to do it. That is brutal, and that just kills me every single time. It and most of these moments I've talked about are things that now hit me harder as I've gotten older, as opposed to when a lot of them first aired. This is one that this was hard when it first aired. It's probably gotten harder since then, but this is one that even on first viewing, it really got to me, and it stuck with me, and it is, in my estimation, the saddest moment in modern era Doctor Who. That's my list. This has been dour. This has been Not that much fun, but I'm still glad I did it. So what are your thoughts on the saddest moments of Doctor Who? If you want to give a classic era example, by all means go for it. You want to give your own top 10, you want to say things you think should have been on my list, whatever you want to do, drop your thoughts down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks, give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast that's available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm also one half of the Punch Like a Girl podcast. That is a presentation of the Fire and Water Podcast Network, available fireandwaterpodcast.com. And until next time, this council is adjourned.